This is a new song. The Lord's already been dealing with us about it. It's called "The King of My Heart," and man, that's our prayer for everybody in here this morning. That you would just let the Lord come in and be the King of your heart. And that's something that I'm working on today. Hopefully more than yesterday, and hopefully more every day. But we just want to invite y'all into this song. Just look at the words and think about your God and think about what He's done for you, and just let your worship just flow out. We think we know that powerful things will happen if we'll do that. So let's just lift Him up this morning.
Be the mountain where I run. Good. Well, my name is Matthew Galloway. I'm the lead pastor here. I'm married to Michelle, that woman I kissed too. I'm glad she explained that. I do forget that we have new people from time to time, and y'all might think I'm a pervert. But anyway, yeah. So, but when she's that pretty, you can't help but kiss her. Just saying. Yeah, she can't keep her hands off of me, y'all. Don't let her fool you. Anyway, if you're coming this morning, we're not really in a series or anything. I'm just kind of preaching as God leads me week to week. And I was talking to several people here recently, and they're just at that stage of life where they're trying to figure out, like, I've been this person for so long, and now I finally come to God, and now I'm trying to figure out exactly who am I? You know what I mean? And like, I think I can relate. My heart goes out to these people because that used to be me. I gotta drink something before I preach anymore. Y'all just stare at me silently while one of these days y'all gonna tell a knock-knock joke or something while I'm doing that, so it won't be so awkward. But anyway, my heart goes out to people like that because, like, I've been there. Like, I can honestly say that I have been in that place in my life, and I'm still at that place in my life where I'm still trying to figure out, who am I? And I don't think that question ever really truly gets solved. Like, I thought, like, when I was like little, like, I thought when you were 20, by the time you were 20, you should have your life together. That's what I thought when I was like 8 years old. And then I got to be 20, and I was like, my life was so together when I was 10 years old. I wish I could go back to that. And now, like, you know, I'm 31 years old now, and Tony Holloman jokes about this all the time. He says, man, you never do figure it out. You always constantly figuring it out, going, you think you got it when you get to be an old man like him, but you don't. You never do figure it out. And like, when I was in my life, I went through years and years and years where I tried to be somebody that I wasn't. Y'all know a lot of my testimony, and if y'all were here for the very first Sunday, I'm going to share a little bit more about who I am today, just very briefly. Like, I was that kid that was raised in church, was there every day that the door was open, like Sunday, Sunday night, Wednesday, Tuesday nights when we had different meetings and stuff. I was a kid that went to high school, like, read his Bible, like, at the lunch table in high school. Can you imagine how cool I was? Right? And good looks only get you so far, people. And, you know, and I was sitting there and I was reading them. And then, like, I got to this part where, like, all of a sudden I ran into a wall. And it was like one day I began to doubt everything that I knew about God. And it was because a couple of bad things happened in my life. A lot of people have had worse off things. But then I began to take one step away from God. And I started to hang out with people I shouldn't hang out with, and do things I shouldn't do. And I was never really an awful person. Like, I never went to jail. I did run from the cops a couple times, but never got caught. You know, but like, I mean, I was never like, you know, just homeless and on the street, but I did not know who I was. And I ran from the Lord for so long, I would say 10 years. And finally one day, like, I got to rock bottom. And that's where a lot of us find ourselves when we do find ourselves looking up to God. We have nowhere else to go, and we say, God, I'm tired of doing this. I'm tired of doing things my way. I'm going to give you my whole life, God, because I don't know what else to do. And I did that, and like, I did that in one moment. Like, y'all know I was down at White Lake, and I said, I ain't got nothing else, God. Finally, here, you can have me, because I'm tired of running. Like, and it is not working out well, and I am miserable. So I said, here, God, here I am. And I came back to God, and I felt his love, and I felt that, like, him just, Daddy God, just wrap his arms around me. And, like, just literally, like, I could feel this, like, God just step me down there and then get down on his knee and look me in the eye like a daddy does to his little boy. He says, now who are you? And that sounds like a simple question. But let me tell you, I didn't know. And when the God of the universe asks you, who are you? And you genuinely want to answer him with everything that you have, but you honestly don't know because you've been living a lie and trying to be somebody you're not for the past 10 years. That's a bad feeling. And worse off than that, I had no clue as far as how to get to that point where I could say, this is who I am. And I heard him say what he said to Peter and Paul and all the disciples. He said, if you'll follow me, you'll find yourself. Simple words, 2 simple words that he spoke to every disciple in the Bible. He says, come, follow me. Like, and we try to make it out like there's this, like you see the journey, like you see the end of the road, like God, I'm coming to you, and now I can see that I'm going to be a pastor at New Direction one day, and I'm going to marry Michelle, and I'm going to be Eli's dad, and I can tell that I'm not only going to do all of that because my identity is not in all of that, my identity is in being a son of God. But you can't see that at first. You can't see the journey when you're just at the very first step. All you have to do is you just have to start taking a step and following him day by day. And I got a little story at the end that I'm going to share a little bit more to tie that back in. But I took a step toward God that day, and then he opened up another door. And I took one more step, and he opened up another door. And that's who I found myself out. See, your identity isn't in, my identity wasn't in Matthew Galloway. Like you see, because my dream for my life was to be a paramedic, to get up every day, to go to work like I did for the past 10 years, get up, go to work every day, have a good job, a stress-free job, and I thought it was stress-free anyway, but you know, you get up, you go to work, and you don't have to worry about doing anything. You can take the parts of God that you want to take, but you can leave the parts that are hard and uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to be a paramedic, go to work day after day, and come home, get married to a nice girl, and then just raise a family and be a good person. Like, there's nothing wrong with that dream at all. But see, God's plans were meet and greater than those of my own. And you see, I had tried to do things Matthew's way for the past 10 years. And I had tried to get myself into relationship after relationship after relationship. And how many of y'all know that whoever you're dating at the time, like, you tend to kind of act like? Single people in here, y'all listen to me now. Like, whoever you marry, you have a lot of your identity tied in with that person. And see, and I tried to, whoever I was hanging out with, my friends and stuff, I tried to act like them, and I found myself at so many parties and stuff. I found myself at a party at the beach one night, doing something that, you know, no Christian should do, being around things that no Christian should be around. And I remember in that night how miserable I was. Like, I was trying to be these people, but I knew that wasn't where I belonged. And I found myself out on the beach at 2 o'clock in the morning, down at Emerald Isle, walking around, saying, Lord, I'm just sitting on the sand dune saying, Lord, I'd rather be out here with you than out there with them. And again, you have to ask yourself, well, why are you? You see, I was trying to get my identity with the people I was around. You can never get your identity from people. I don't care if it's your husband, your wife, your mom, or your dad. You can never get your identity from you. Because only God knows who you are. God knows you better than you know yourself. If you've got your Bibles, you can turn to Matthew chapter 16. We're going to get into some scripture here. In Matthew chapter 16. And this is one of my favorite dudes. If John Holloman was a disciple, he would have been Peter. Because Peter was gung-ho all the time. John, you smiling because you know us right. Like, he was a dude that come up to arrest Jesus, take him, and he pulled out a sword to cut off a guy's ear. He was the guy always like getting way too excited and then embarrassing himself, you know. Like, I'm just saying, it would be you. It would be you. But Peter is like my boy. Like, I feel like a special connection with Peter because maybe like I feel a special connection to John. He's my best friend, you know. I like crazy people, you know. But But Peter's like this guy, and like Peter like is sitting there fishing on a boat one day. Jesus says, "Come and follow me," and Peter does, and he's following Jesus around like this whole time in Jesus' ministry, and he's seeing Jesus do these incredible things. Like he's seeing Jesus heal the blind. Like he's seeing Jesus. Like, do y'all understand that? Like he is looking at Jesus eye to eye. Like he's hearing him laugh and watching him chew his food, and he's being around him so much, and he's starting to figure out who Jesus is. And what happens is that Jesus has just gone out and he's just been preaching to these people, and he sits down with his close friends, his 12 disciples, and he says, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, which is just a name of a town back then, he asked his disciples, he said, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" Which Jesus is talking about himself in the third person there. So, in other words, Jesus is saying, "Who do people say I am?" He said, "Well," they replied, "some say John the Baptist, and some say Elijah, and others say Jeremiah or one of the other prophets." And then he asked him, he said, "But who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter answered, he said, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus replied, "You are blessed, Simon, son of John, because my Father in heaven has revealed this to you. You didn't learn this from any human being." He says, "Now I say to you that you are Peter," which means rock. "And upon this rock I will build my church, and all the powers of hell will not conquer it." So what they're doing is they're sitting around, and Jesus is hearing so much flack from people, because people are always questioning who he is, and he's trying to show to them that he is the Son of God. He is the Messiah, and people just aren't getting it. And then some people are, and he's sitting there with his closest friends, and he says, "But who do you say I am?" And see, what they try to do is they try to do like we do today. Like Jesus sits there and he asks us a question, and we try to say, well, I know that Doug says so and so and so and so, or I know Steve says so and so and so and so, but Jesus says, no. I didn't ask who they said I was. I want you to know who you say I am. Who do you say I am? Because it don't matter what anybody else thinks about me. It matters what you say about me. And Peter, bless his heart, for the first time in his messed up life, he gets it right and he nails it. And Peter sticks up in all his bravery and all his courage. He says, "You're the Messiah. You are the Son of the living God." He said, "I know it, Jesus, because I've seen you and I know it." And then something incredible happens. Jesus sits there and he looks at Simon, who had lived his life as a fisherman, bringing in dirty nets all day, smelling of rotten fish, and he says, "No, you might think you're Simon. I'm telling you, you're Peter." He said, "Not only you're Peter, but you're going to lead my church one day after I die." He looked at a fisherman and he said, "I don't care if you've been living your life as a fisherman your whole time. I don't care if you've been trying to do it your way, but I'm telling you now that you're more than what you think you are." And he even changed his name, because I think Peter had self-esteem issues. Like I've looked and I've studied at Peter, and I think Peter oftentimes beat himself up over the stupid things that he did from time to time. And Jesus knew him. And I think Jesus knew that Peter would need to look back and say, "Jesus changed my name because Jesus changed who I am." The day Peter figured out who Jesus was to him, the day Peter figured out who Jesus was the day that Jesus showed him who Peter was. Let me tell y'all something. The day y'all figure out who Jesus is to y'all is the day y'all will start to figure out who y'all are. Because your identity isn't in yourself. Your identity's in him. I don't preach all day long. Many times God changed the name in the person's Bible to signify a great change in the person. That's in your outlines, and if y'all are following along, I'm skipping around a whole lot today. My mind's just kind of like a little squirrel. It's going back and forth. But if you'll look like in the Bible and stuff, and I've got a couple of examples up there, like Abram, back in the Bible, Abram was a guy that he just went out, he just liked Jesus. He just liked the Lord. He just served him. And one day, like, God came up to Abram and he said, no, I'm going to change your name to Abraham because you're not who you thought you were your whole life. Like, you've been living your life as like a shepherd and just a guy serving me, but I'm telling you, like, my destiny for you is greater. And because of that, because I want you to remember that your identity is in me and in my plan for your life, I'm changing your name. Because I want you to know, when you meet me, you are a different person. And Sarah, or Sarai, was his wife, and she was a motherless woman for so long. Like, all she wanted was to have kids. And she was like close to 100 years old when God's speaking this to her. And God comes up to her one day, he says, no, from this day forward, you're going to be named Sarah because you're going to be a mother of many nations. And then Simon, we just talked about Simon. Simon was a fisherman, but God had a bigger plan for Peter than what Peter had for himself. And he said, because I want you to remember that my plan for you is to be a different person from who you could be on your own, I'm going to change your name to Peter. And then Saul to Paul. That's another one. That's my hero because, like, I feel such a connection to this guy. If you want to read about it, start reading chapter Acts. Like, we looked at chapter Acts, the book of Acts. We talked about the Bible last Sunday, and a lot of you said, where can I start? Like, I love reading the book of Acts because of this guy right here. You see, Saul was a guy that went out and he executed Christians. And he was on the road one day to go to another town to arrest Christians and have them executed. Like, if Saul was around today, Saul would have been an ISIS member. Like, he would have been like Osama bin Laden, those type of guys. That's how bad and brutal that dude was. But you know what he did? He was walking on that road and Jesus came down and he met Jesus standing in front of him. And from that day forward, he became the greatest evangelist the world has ever seen. Not because Saul deserved it. Not because Saul was a great communicator. It says he couldn't communicate well, but because God's plan for Saul was bigger than Saul's plan for himself. Is Jesus coming over there right now? So a light come on. It's like... But what I'm telling you, though, is like God changes your name because he wants to know. Like, he's literally not going to change your name when you meet him today or whatever, but what he wants you to know is that his plan for your life is different from your own. His plan for who you are is different from your own. Like, some of us can't get past the sinful person that we once were, but man, like, we got to quit living as Saul and start living as Paul. And then I want to go back to Peter. We're going to flip over to John chapter 21 right here. John chapter 21. Now, Peter had a good revelation back early on about who Jesus was, and Peter started to step into his role. Like, he started to step into who God really called him to be. And then Jesus, how many of y'all know what he did on, like, the night Jesus was executed? Like, literally, like a little servant girl, like 10 years old, was asking him, like, do you know Jesus? And he said, I don't even know that man. So how does that go? Like, the man that boldly proclaimed Jesus one minute, the next day he was like, I don't even know who he is. I don't even know who he is. And like, Jesus died, and Peter really didn't know he rose again yet, but Peter was out there. What was Peter doing? He was back out there fishing on the nets the very next day after Jesus died on the cross. Peter had been following his whole life toward Jesus, moving into who Peter was supposed to be. And then in an instant, Jesus died, and Peter, all his hope was lost. And Peter went right back to dragging in those big old dirty nets. Peter went right on back to being Simon. Matter of fact, this isn't in your outlines, but what I want you to take notes or take notice of is Jesus came out there on the shore and he asked, and notice what Jesus calls him. In verse 15, he says, after breakfast, Jesus asked Peter, he said, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Now, so many times we read over what things and we miss what Jesus was talking about. But Jesus was basically saying, like, you're not being my son anymore, and you're being like Simon, son of John. Your identity's being more in a fisherman than in me. And he said, yes, Lord, Peter replied, you know I love you. And now the author is still calling Peter Peter because he's writing in him after. But he says, then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question. Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said. You know I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. The third time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time, and he said, Lord, you know that I love you. You know everything. You know that I love you. And then Jesus said, then feed my sheep. In other words, Peter had denied him 3 times, and Jesus got him to say 3 times who he was again. I guess just to reiterate that you do love me, right? And then he says, then feed my sheep. And then Jesus, he forgives him, and he says, I tell you the truth. When you were young, you were able to do as you liked. You dressed yourself and you went wherever you wanted to go. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands and others will dress you and take you where you don't want to go. In other words, Jesus is giving him back the keys to who he was. He did this to let him know by what kind of death he would have to glorify God. And then Jesus told him, he said, follow me. And then Peter turned around, and they're walking on the beach on the lakeside. And he said, then Peter turned around and saw behind them the disciple Jesus loved. In other words, they're talking about John here. Then Peter turned around and saw behind him John, the one who leaned over to Jesus during the supper and asked, Lord, who will betray you? Peter asked, Jesus, what about him? Jesus replied, listen to Jesus' reply. He says, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that for you? As for you, you follow me. Now see, a lot of us try to do what Peter did. Because a lot of us will slip and will fall into we'll live for the Lord, and we think like, oh yes, I'm figuring out who I am. And then in a minute, like something happens and something shakes our faith, and all of a sudden we're back dragging in our old dirty nets again. Being who we used to be. And then Jesus and God does that. They're a good God, and he knows where to find you. He says, I'm going to go back and I'm going to find him, because that's not where he belongs. He belongs out here sharing my word. And then what Peter did is they're walking along, and Jesus he's telling them, he's encouraging them again. He's saying, look, you've got a great plan for your life. Like, you're going to die for me, Peter, one day. But I got a plan for you. And then what Peter does is he does like a lot of us do. He turns around and he looks at John behind him, and he says, what about him? Jesus says, it don't matter about him. I'm talking about you. You see, a lot of us try to get our identity into somebody else, and we try to live God's destiny for our life through somebody else. Now, I'm incredibly blessed. Like, I feel like my calling and my job and my passion have all aligned. So, like, I don't have this thing where, like, I'm going to a job as an accountant during the week and I'm doing something for the Lord on the weekends. Like, I can kind of see a little more clearly what it is, but my point here is that you can't live your destiny in somebody else's. Just because God called me to be a pastor didn't mean that he didn't call you to be something even greater. See, Mario was a cop. Still is. But God's plan for his life, when Mario met Jesus and really started living for the Lord, Mario has become a different person for this place. God's plan for Mario is to have everybody play kickball on Saturday afternoons. And you know what? It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's incredible. Like some of you go to work and you say, man, I got my jobs and stuff, but you've always had your job, but you've never done it for the glory of the Lord. And all of a sudden now in your jobs, people are saying, who is that guy? And you're not just going to work every day. All of a sudden you're getting up and you're being a light for Jesus every day. And Jesus is having your identity in that, because people aren't looking at you as the real estate agent, the bank teller, the school teacher. All of a sudden they're looking to you and saying, that's so-and-so. Like, they know Jesus. And they're a child of God. And they're seeing Jesus in you. You see, what I want you to know is that if you don't know how to get to the Lord, and I'm going to kind of wing it right here. If you don't know how to get to the Lord, like, I get it. Like, following God, like, what does that look like? Let me tell you. Jesus never once in the whole Bible, when he met a person, when he called a person, when they gave their life to him, he never once really revealed the entire big picture. He might spoke kind of, metaphorically about the grand scheme or whatever, but none of them could see step by step the path that they were going to take in God's life for them. Like, and a lot of us get tired because we feel like we want to know and we want to see that road that God's going to put out for us. Like, and I get it, because I mean, it's like you hop in the car with God and God's sitting there and and you say, where are we going, God? He says, just start driving, I'll tell you. I hate when people do that. Like, I get in there sometimes, and I got in there one day with John. I think we were going somewhere, and he said, I know how to get here. Just start driving. And I said, no, I want to know how to get here. I want to know that turn left, and then 2 more blocks, I'm going to turn right. And then I wanted to know when I get to this store right here, I was going to get out and pick up this. Like, I wanted to know every detail of the journey. There's just something apprehensive about a human spirit when you get in the car, and he's just saying, I'm going to tell you where to go when you get there. That's what God asks us to do. Is just follow him. He didn't ask you to know where you were going. He says, just follow me, and I'll show you. Like, there's no way that I could have seen this church like 5 years ago. Like, when God called me and I gave everything to God, he said the first step, he said, quit your job. I said, well, that don't make no sense. Like, I went, but I knew it was God talking. He said, when you do that, I'll show you the next step. And I went there and I did. Let me tell you, it wasn't long before I knew the next step. Before I got into ministry classes over here. Then when I got into ministry classes, I said, well, now what do I do? What do I, am I supposed to be a youth pastor? Because kids hate me. Like, that don't make no sense. And he said, you just keep on. And the door's going to open. And at that very first class, I met John, and we were talking about our hearts to have something like this in Greene County. And God elbowed me. He said, that's your next step. See, it's so beautiful when you follow Jesus, because you're not following in your own faith. You're not following it in everything you are. You're following by faith. And that's when you're stepping outside of yourself and stepping into who he is. You got to live your life for him and not you. It don't make sense, but it is beautiful. Follow him, and I'll show you where to go. I'm going to get the guys to come up here and close this out. I had another story for y'all, but I'm going to end it right here. they're praying. Somebody come down here and pray because we drug them out and moved trash can. No, but seriously, like, we put those places out because there's just something vulnerable about getting up and being brave in front of everybody and saying, like, I want to come out here and I'm going to get on my knees before you, God, because, like, I'm giving up my pride when I come down here and I pray. Like, I'm giving up who I am and I'm just falling at the feet of Jesus. And I'm saying that's the only place that makes sense. The more you give up of yourself, the more you find of Him. As they close us out, I'll be down here. You're welcome to join me.
Are you hurting, broken within?
is when you've been gone for a long time and you come back home. I cannot think about what the prodigal son felt like. Been going away for a long time. I can't think about what it felt like when he come back and he saw his daddy waiting for him. He didn't ask where he'd been, he just said, welcome home. See, when God looks at you, he don't care where you be. He don't care how you live in your life. And when he sees you, he just sees a little boy and a little girl. That's who you are to him. Don't forget it. God loves you, we love you, and I love you. Have a good Sunday.